Well, hello everyone. I am super excited to be hosting another one of these webinars with all of you guys. It has been almost 6 weeks since I did the last one back in February, but this is something that I want to start doing a little bit more often rather than just me being by myself. I am going to start bringing in different industry experts, whether they're drone pilots out in the field or people from software companies or maybe even some people from DJI. So uh, hopefully you guys tune in for some future broadcasts that I'm going to be having. But for this one, I want to be focusing on how to really get into the industry as a drone pilot, right? There's a lot more to just buying a drone and calling yourself a commercial drone pilot. So I'm honestly really excited to be able to bring on my hopefully host for future webinars here, Julia. She's definitely somebody that you guys should follow on Instagram and just kind of see what she's doing. But we're going to be having a conversation about how we got into the industry, some of the stuff that we're doing to separate ourselves from everybody else, and really some tips on how you guys can also get into the industry. So without further ado, hi, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Doing pretty well. Hopefully your day's been going pretty well.
Not bad. Not bad for a Thursday. Absolutely. It's good to see you again.
Yes, you too. So, Julia, why don't you kind of give us your full background, how you got into drones, and really how you were able to differentiate yourself from everybody else rather than going on to droners and getting those $75 jobs. How did you get into the industry?
Well, so my background has nothing to do with drones. I went to school for architecture. I'm an architectural designer, so that means that I did not get my architectural license, but I worked a little bit in the industry. Um, Immediately defected and went into construction. So started working in construction in BIM, which is building information modeling, a lot of 3D coordination, 4D modeling, scheduling, things like that, which transitioned into laser scanning, 360 cameras, and then inherently, 3D printing and drones and things like that. So a few years back, I was just given the keys to the drone program and asked how I could develop it. And I got to kind of try my bit at a general contracting firm in Kansas City. And it went really, really well. We went from just me being a pilot to having about 25 of us within a year. And they're still going really strong. So I came over to Black and Weech about a year and a half ago to help grow their drone program, to help stand up the training, organization, understanding that you have quality, and all the things that come with that. So that's what I've been doing for the last year and a half. So primarily in construction, a little bit in engineering and survey. And I already saw that there were some questions in the chat about survey. So I can't wait to get into it.
Yes.
They're asking good questions out there, and most of my who I am and who I am in the drone industry is just trying to create accessibility, because I 10 years ago never thought I would be in this, and now I'm running major teams across the country. So it's exciting stuff.
Honestly, that's awesome. How about we start with just your baby steps? Like, what was your first drone? What was your first experiences uh, getting into the industry? Even way before you managing a ton of other people, because again, I had my small steps way before I started managing over 100 different pilots across the nation. So, what was it for you? What interests you, I should say, to get into drones?
Absolutely. I mean, it was how easy it could be. I was working for a general contractor. Like I said, we had surveyors on all of our job sites, and you're paying these guys to drive around on a buggy and, shoot points across hundreds of acres. And we had this project that was like 450 acres, and we were trying to tell
Oh,
them all this cool technology that we could use for it, to make their lives easier. And it just seemed kind of like the best solution. And I'll always say this, my old boss says this, if you don't have an official drone program in your construction company, you have an unofficial drone program. So really, for me, it was tapping into those people who had the unofficial drone program, seeing what they were already doing and what they liked, and giving it legs and giving it structure. So my first drone at that company was the Phantom 4, really great workhorse. I know everybody knows it. I flew that thing into the ground, literally and figuratively. um, and that just started with using the Phantom and drone deploy. And obviously it started with the Part 107, studying, kind of understanding. And then, a lot of YouTube University, kind of seeing what everybody else was doing, watching hundreds of unboxings. But for the most part, talking to people like yourself and across the country who were doing things like us, or things that we didn't want to do, the failures were kind of the strongest part of it. Finding drones that were really affordable, but just too affordable. So the Phantom was kind of that sweet spot for us, and I think a lot of other people.
Yeah, a lot of people can definitely relate to that. I mean, that was actually one of my initial drones that I first started. I actually started with the Mavic 2 Pro when we were doing some of our smaller projects, and then there's just that next natural step of picking up that drone and flying it into the ground, like I did quite a few times.
Yeah.
But what were some of the use cases like that you guys were using it outside of the general survey purposes of it?
Right, mapping. And that's generally the majority of what we were doing is mapping, cut fill analysis, because if you're not doing something like that, you're counting trucks to figure out how much dirt is moving on your site. So instead of having a guy counting trucks and giving you a rough estimate, it finally gave us real numbers to, really give us some legs to stand on when it came to, litigation or even just proper estimation and scheduling. We've also used quite a bit of it just for visual inspections. We invested in a little thermal camera and decided after we had a building fire that it would be a good idea to inspect the envelope. That kind of became a little bit more of a standard. Confined spaces is another one. There's plenty of areas that people can't get into or don't want to get into. Having a little Elios or something in a cage, something that's made for even a Skydio that you can just fly into a confined space that you don't have to be in. It's been a huge game changer. Also, telecom lines, tracking telecom lines. You used to have a guy go out there and shoot a laser pointer of how tall something is, or tracking a line, driving the line, walking the line. If you get to sit there and fly 4 miles, it makes it a lot easier.
Oh, I bet. What's funny is I've actually got a cool video coming up for one of the people that I'm meeting up with in California this week with transmission and distribution inspection. So
nice. Okay.
It's going to be a pretty controversial video, but I think it's really going to show the benefits of why drones matter in this space for doing inspections. It goes far beyond just that cool factor of, oh my God, I've got a drone and I can, capture some photos and some videos. And to relate back to how you guys were leveraging it, right? Creating those digital twins was kind of the money piece, right? Rather than sending somebody out there, it could be in harm's way, right? There's different factors that come into play. Leveraging that drone technology to create those digital twins, and then with your background and CAD and everything, I'm sure that it was just light years ahead of what you learned in school on how to go through all these things, right?
Oh yeah, it was just like the easy button that you didn't know that you could do. Like in architecture school, they required us to do everything old school for the first 2 years. So you don't touch a computer. You do everything by hand. You're hand drafting all that. Some of us figured out how to use SketchUp around that time.
Oh
And so when
yeah.
we had to do like a 1 or 2 point perspective, we cheated and we did it on there and traced it. So, it's like there's all these new developments that really are giving you that cheat, that it's not really a cheat. It's a tool that's making us so much, we can focus on something else. We can go leagues beyond that and focus on the intricacies and, the accuracies. I have people designing off of this, and it is survey accurate because, you get into RTK or PPK and these really high definition 42 megapixel cameras, it's very easy to get survey accurate data. In fact, I very hardly ever have issues with getting something less than survey accurate data unless I flew it to be inaccurate. I'm flying too fast or too high or whatever. I'm in a hurry and I don't need it to be that accurate.
So, you bring up a really good point, and I actually see quite a few questions about that in the chat here about generating highly accurate, right? The geographically accurate data. Both you and I, at least I'm not a PLS. So how do you get around being able to provide quote unquote survey accurate data, right? You have RTK technology, you've got ground control points that you can use. But ultimately the surveyor has to sign off on the data, right? Or is there other things that you can do to get quote unquote survey accurate data?
Right. I mean, I think you and I both know there's a couple of workarounds of things that you can use, like known points that you can use for me personally, I am almost always just advertising it as survey internally. I'm talking internal advertising.
Right.
It is survey accurate because we have our standards internally that keep the quality in that way. And we know it's survey accurate because we validate it in multiple use cases where we flew it, we had the buggy check it, and the cross-checking was greater accuracy with the drone than even with the buggy topo. There's kind of a fine line there of how much you need that all the time. Also,
Right.
there's also the question of photogrammetry is taking photos, and there's the even greater question of LiDAR.
Right.
That's a whole different can of worms. So I even forgot what your question was originally because I started to get
Well,
way
it
in the
was more
weeds.
about, how do you get around the whole fact of requiring a surveyor to provide
Oh,
survey accurate data? Because this is one of the
yeah.
challenges that I face all of the times. I was even talking with one of my industry partners earlier today. They create smart targets, and he says, yeah, there's a lot of projects that you really don't need a surveyor to go out there and shoot controls for you to
Right.
then tie the data to. Right, you can just leverage the RTK capability within drones, using local core stations or even your own base station for corrections, or using the PPK method of tying that data to a fixed point, whether you set that fixed point or using it from a surveyor. But the issue lies in if there needs to be a vertical accuracy, right? So if you're doing anything that has to do with floods, you don't want it to be half a foot off on the vertical accuracy, which is something that will happen with RTK. But for a lot of the projects that I'm providing to my clients nowadays, it's just RTK because that's all they really care about. That horizontal accuracy for the most part. So, in your line of work, have you seen that be an issue, or is everyone pretty chill with that?
It depends on who you're talking to. I think if you're designing a project and you're used to getting a scan that's maybe a few years old or a buggy topo or something that you kind of know is like a broad spectrum idea or an estimate of what your site looks like anyways, like those guys don't need it to be survey accurate. They're happy with the RTK. With the crowd that is actually building directly from those things, they have to have it be survey accurate. And I do get a surveyor on site to sign off. But honestly, the question just becomes like, is this a legally binding document that you are building directly from that you need the signature of the surveyor of, or is it not? It just comes down to your verbiage. And for me, the CYA, making sure that I'm speaking directly about what I'm doing, I just have two different buckets. You have the survey accurate, and then you have survey quality. The survey accurate is done with the surveyor and you have him sign off, but I rarely do that. We almost never do that. We almost never need to, because it's
Right.
usually not a legally binding. Those aren't our shop drawings. It's still just a drone scan that we're using, but the shop drawings that they're shooting in the field, it's going to happen anyways. So there's legally binding documentation that the word drone is not in their contract. So at the end of the day, they're going to have their surveys separately, but together, and we can have that accuracy. We know we have that accuracy, but it's not legally binding in any way, or unless we need it to be, if that makes sense.
And no, it does, because that's my exact same experience too. I think that's probably the perfect verbiage, right? Is it a legally binding document that you have to tie your data to? If yes, then bring a surveyor on. Otherwise, whatever the client wants to do with it, they're going to do with it.
Otherwise, it's a tool, and it's a great tool, and it's a very
Exactly.
robust tool. That's what it is.
Absolutely. Yeah, that has been my experience too. With the surveyors that I have worked with, they're like, yeah, I mean, I don't even need to be out here. You've got all the data with your drone. So
yeah.
Awesome. So what are some of the projects that you can talk about that you are working on now that has transitioned from, the days of flying the Phantom 4 Pro? I know you're flying an M300 with the thermal camera.
Yep, we're flying the M300 with both the HT or H20T thermal camera and then the P1. P1 simply just because we wanted to be able to have that survey accurate type data. And it's the RTK, obviously. So we bought a couple of those at the beginning of last year, I want to say, and started trying to do all of our solar sites in basically like three phases. You start your solar site after it's been grubbed and cleared, and we take an RTK scan. these sites are anywhere between, I don't know, 400 acres to 11,000. It's huge. It's
They're
it's
massive.
the whole
Yeah.
yeah, it's the whole state of Georgia, Florida, all down south. So now they're doing an RTK scan at the beginning, so that eliminates all that buggy topo that they have to do across that massive site and saves them weeks of trucking out there. Honestly, they just have to do their verifications afterwards. And that gets signed off by a licensed surveyor because that's the beginning of their construction. And then we're actually integrating some GPS equipment, and we're trying to do some of our pile driving and all the arrays that can be really easily done with some GPS equipment. So we're starting to implement that. And then the last phase is the thermal quality check warranty phase. So at the end, you finish an array, you turn it on, it's tracking with the sun. We do a thermal scan to make sure that everything's working. And then when we send our quality guys or warranty guys out there, before sign off to the owner, we have a complete report of exactly what's going on. Our warranty guy has seen it with his eyes from the air and on the ground, and we just have all the data that they could possibly need in a really clean report. So that's been kind of just the program that was the easiest to roll out, because solar is kind of, pretty regular. You're going to have kind of the same
Right.
stuff. It's going to be a flat side. You're going to need thermal at the end. So that's been kind of an easy one for us. We have a lot of thermal projects right now, or solar projects right now, that are kicking off. So I can't train my guys fast enough. I'm currently, speaking of surveyors, I'm trying to train all my surveyors to be pilots. I think I have 10 of them right now, and they're Part 107, and 2 of them are already licensed. So they're getting there, and it will be nice when they can verify their own data, set their own ground control points, and I can just give them the matrice and let them be.
Let them be. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. So can you talk more about developing a drone program? Because my experience with it has been quite a wild ride. When I was working at the software company that I was at for almost 2 years, what are some of the challenges that you face? What are some things that you're noticing people that are getting into the industry that want to be, a professional drone pilot, that want to do, the kind of line of work that you do? What are some of the challenges that you've seen and building, those programs?
Yeah. The biggest challenge for me, because I'm in a general contracting firm, I'm working with people who are already in the field and already have full-time jobs. The
Right.
hardest part for me is selling them on having a second job of flying the drone on site as well. They have to get licensed, so that takes them maybe a week or 2 of studying. And we've got videos through Drone Deploy. They do the education tool through that. And then they go take the test, and they spend 2 days with me on site, where I'm telling them, depending on what their scope is, getting them familiar with their drone, taking them through their pre-flight checklist. And then I let them fly, and that's kind of it. We have check-ins every few weeks at first, and then they are still required to do their pre-flight checklist and all that. But yeah, the biggest challenge for me has been convincing people that it will save time after they get their license, because obviously for the surveyor, it's so obvious for them to see how quickly it will return their time.
Right.
But if it's somebody like a coordinator who spends most of their time inside the trailer, like doing paperwork or whatever else they're doing, like manning Procore, to get them to go out, and just to have an extra part of your job at all is just really hard. So that's been a part of it. Another element that's been a struggle has technology fatigue. We have a lot of different programs, and we're a 12,000
Right.
person company, so we've got a lot of internal programs. So having people make a login, make another login, get this license, do this thing, and then they find out that the test is nothing like flying, and then they have to do this other stuff. So it's really, that's the hard part, is getting, just walking 100 people through that whole process takes a lot of time. So we have a pretty robust training program that's kind of online in our own little thing that we're developing, where you can kind of keep track of everybody. There's programs like Drone Deploy and Site Scan where you can keep track of their activity, but it doesn't really tell you,
Right.
their health. So we have a couple different practical tests that we're starting to implement to have people come through. When you train on a crane, you're required to do a practical test in front of our people before we let you take the crane on your job site, just
Right.
to make sure that you know what you're doing. That we're doing the same thing for drones, just basics. If you're in an emergency and there's a crane swinging this way, do you know where you're landing, type things, just to understand their competencies. But yeah, a lot of paperwork, a lot of training, but a lot of it has been just taking everybody through the process from beginning to end, and then just giving them the autonomy to fly, because as soon as most of the time they're excited about it and they want to do it on their own time anyways. So we've had people, I say, take it home with you this weekend and enjoy flying it instead of having me watch you. And they end up flying a lot more after that once it becomes a little more personal. And then they buy a mini, and then it's all
And
gravy.
then they start sinking their money into more drones.
Yeah, and then they quit because they started their own company.
So for people that have never worked for somebody else, right? Somebody that's new to the industry. Obviously, the guys that you work with, they're already in the corporate world. So right, you're just training them to be another worker bee. What would you suggest for those that want to get into the industry, that have interest of being a commercial drone pilot, of turning this into a full-time gig? From your experience, what are some tips or some pointers that you would give to people?
I would say, we do have a lot of people that we still contract out drone pilots depending on the location. If we don't have somebody out there or we don't have the right type of drone, we'll employ somebody, like yourself, or so, free guy, freebie, free agent out there that we can pay on a contract as like a as a subcontractor. My recommendation for those people would have really good documentation and really good paperwork. A lot of us are, adding this document as like in the appendix of a contract that's going into a multi-billion-dollar contract. So having really nice
Right.
documentation and having a pretty broad understanding of, FAA, Blue SUAS, the different types of drones, the types of places you can fly with those drones, just having that in your documentation so that they know that you're not going to be sharing their data in some, nefarious way, or even just in a completely oblivious way. Like they don't realize that
Right.
they're not flying secure things, or they built their own thing, or whatever it is, or they're flying a federal job and they can't fly that with a Phantom. Just those types of things. I think having really good documentation, and selling yourself to construction, I think, is pretty easy. It's pretty basic. If you're the right cost and you can do it efficiently and you have a good contract, like, people will hire you. If you are a pretty down basic, I'm going to do good work, and you show the quality in your documentation, it's all about quality. So, that's how you build trust.
So essentially, having your own sample data sets to prove what your capabilities are, what
100%.
your value is, what you can bring to the table, not just having a generic website saying, "Hey, I've got a drone and I can do all 25 of these different services," which you've never done before, right?
Yeah. And like very specifically what they're doing, because there's people out there who, like, their drone scope of what they're about to do. My guys on site have no idea what they're about to get. Are they going to get photos? Are they going to get a map? Are they going to get survey data? Like, what are they going to get? Having a very clear documentation, understanding not only like that this person knows what they're talking about, but I also know what they're talking about because I know what they're going to give me. That's incredibly important, because it becomes this weird wishy-washy like exchange of data, because we're all processing in the cloud. And what are you going to give
Right.
everybody access to your cloud? I have people who just share a couple of photos. They were paying this guy like $5,000 every time he came out, and he was sending us 5 photos. I was like, who is this guy and who's paying him?
Wow.
But yeah, that's what I'm saying. Somebody on this is going to be like, I'm going to be that guy next. But this
Yeah.
education piece is super important. You have to tell them what you're giving them, and otherwise you might end up in a pickle too if you think you accidentally said your survey accurate and they come after you later. Your documentation is it's the law for yourself. It's your cloak, it's your protection.
Absolutely. Outside of kind of the obvious of getting education on the technical side of it, what else would you recommend to people that are getting into the space outside of having the documentation and understanding? What are some low-hanging fruit that you see out in the market right now? Right, you said that it should be pretty straightforward to work with a construction company or a contractor, but I guess like one specific thing that you could think of that's pretty low hanging fruit that most people should be able to obtain with having the right documentation and the right education behind them, or at least fundamental understanding of being able to provide, photogrammetry or mapping with a drone.
Right, like how to get your foot in the door.
Yeah, essentially.
I mean, all these general contractors around, especially in like the Midwest where I am, there's estimators who, if you call them and you get on their list, if they have a job in the future that has anything that has these buzzwords in it, like drone or pilot or survey, then they might just call you. I find that cold calling has been a really incredible experience, especially in this weird post-COVID virtual world of cold calling
Huh.
people to say like, "Hi, want to introduce myself. I'm a drone pilot. I have a lot to offer. I just want to make sure I'm on this estimating list for bid lists for the future," because right now there's not a whole lot of drone scope in the contract. It gets added later when something goes wrong, or added later,
Right.
with whatever. I think it's super important that we know that that's going to be added in the future, and those people are going to be at the front of the line. So having them on the list now, I think it would be probably a good step. Cold calling people, getting to know people, like you and I just you basically messaged me on LinkedIn, and then we just had like 5 phone calls. Like, we just
Right.
started all in a row. I just that's how connections happen. This is like a building community, and people like the construction people and the ag people and all these other people, the search and rescue people, they want these tools and they don't necessarily want to own them all the time. They are happy
And they also
having other
don't know how
people
to
out
use it
there.
either.
They have
So
no idea how to use it. Yeah, they're happy to have somebody else just come in and be the expert for them and take over.
how much of your position is educating others outside of, just flying the drone, and processing the data? What percentage would you say, revolves around your work with educating others on what you do?
Outside of the training, I would say it's like probably 50%. I spend a lot of time
That's
just talking.
that's exactly how I feel too. Whenever working with clients or getting into other types of projects, is really educating the client on what it is that you can provide. Right. I think it kind of goes back to having that documentation, right? Being well documented, well outspoken, and having that knowledge, where you can look at the data and basically explain every single function of it, and how it would be beneficial for somebody using it. That's what I recommend to everybody. Is not only do you need to be well educated on the subject matter, at least the deliverables that you're providing, but you also need to, in some form, be an educator to that as well. Most people think, oh, I don't want to be an educator. I want to go fly a drone and make money. Well, tough luck, because you're gonna be in a long ride of no jobs.
Right. Right. No, that's totally it. And there's so many people, I feel like there's so many personalities out there who talk about drones and we kind of hear the same things, but we all really want to
Yep.
get into the meat of it. And, there's so many obscure questions when I go out in the field, and they're always asking more questions that I am ending have to say, like, I have no idea, and have to go look up after, because it's just like so
Right.
broad. It's yeah, staying ahead of the Part 107 and the FAA and everything that keeps changing too is very complicated. Like staying, like you have to just be aware. You have to be following a bunch of different government pages to see
Yep.
what, I can't even remember what the last one was. Whatever prohibitions have happened that you have to kind of
Right.
pay attention to and make sure that you're not flying somewhere that you shouldn't be. It's a huge education process for yourself, and also breaking that down into bite-sized pieces and making it so that they don't need the whole world about RTK, but they just need a little bit about one nugget.
Absolutely. Speaking about like knowing where to fly, how to get your waivers and everything, I've got somebody here that asked a question. Gerald here. He says, I live in Washington, D.C. area, and I find it difficult to fly anywhere. How can I navigate this issue and be able to start a drone business? I assume he means kind of the area that he lives in has a lot of airspace restrictions, which can be pretty common in heavily populated cities. You actually have a project that's by an Air Force base, right?
Yeah, I
Or
do.
an
I
Army
have
base?
one, yeah, down in Florida, and there's a restricted area that I cannot fly in at all. There's like they do like special projects. I got a phone number recently of a fellow who I'm intended to call to potentially be able to get permission down there, but I don't think it would ever really happen because of the military base. But I have to fly at 100 feet on the rest of the job site to stay below the restrictions.
Gotcha. What do you have any other project sites that are similar to that,
Um,
where you can fly, but there's a getting that waiver?
Yeah, I have done the waiver a few times, and it's always been pretty easy. Well, I got declined maybe 3 or 4 times. It's mostly about exactly how you word it, the exact elevation,
It's
the
the
exact
language that
time.
it comes down
It's the
to.
language,
Yeah.
yeah. And, if they decline it, you can always just resubmit and try again, because you can change it up a little bit and say, okay, I can make it a half an hour later and see if that works. And a lot of the time that's worked for
Right.
me. Yeah, I'm not sure I know any special workarounds other than, getting like a jailbroken drone, which I don't recommend. But
No.
yeah, other than just doing like the LANC, the LANC, or just the general unlocking that you do.
LANC. Yep.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
tough though.
So some of the ways to navigate that. Luckily, I have a buddy of mine who has been flying airplanes for over 40 years. He's got his Part 107 too. He taught me a lot about the language when it comes to submitting those waivers that the ATC or the FAA will go and either approve or deny. And that is something that I would highly recommend studying up on, because he even gets waivers to fly in some of the most restricted airspace in Florida. I mean, in Florida, we have the massive TFR by Disney World. And then on both of the coasts, we have a lot of Air Force base and military bases. And so most people, when trying to fly their drone, they're most likely not going to be able to. Well, because one, DJI kind of blocks all that stuff out.
Right.
But two, even when you do get your DJI Fly Safe unlock, you still have to do all these other things to get the drone up and running. And 9 times out of 10, it's a pain in the ass to actually get that done. So working with him, he taught me all of the language that comes with submitting it, so that they understand what it is that you're doing. Because if you're just a regular civilian saying, hey, I just want to throw my drone up and fly in this area at 400 feet for 2 hours, they're instantly going to shut that down. But if you explain, hey, I'm going out to, we're giving them coordinates of the grid that you're flying in, how high you're flying, how long the flight's supposed to take, and explaining basically your entire operation, that's how you get those waivers approved. Now, I'm not going to sit here and explain all of it, because I could sit here for 3 hours and explain every single piece of language that you need to use. But that is something that I would highly recommend looking up, especially Gerald, right? That for what you asked, I would look up that information, maybe even look up some free guides on getting your full pilot's license, right? There's a lot of information out there that you can search up for free and understand that language. Obviously, with all of the stuff that I teach on my end, I try and condense it and make it bite-sized information for you to digest for getting into photogrammetry and mapping. But you can take that same concept and find some other resources out there too. So I'm not sure if you knew about that, about using the specific language, but that's
I've
something I
done it
learned having a
and it's
pilot with me.
worked,
Yeah,
but I didn't
yeah,
know. No, so that's very helpful. Also,
yeah.
I think
So
I have
yeah,
a couple
there's a
pilot
there's a few
friends I
pilots
need
that
to
I
hit up.
have that do that. Yeah. Well, some of them are actually formal Air Force pilots as well, so they have a lot of the lingo down too. And one of the pilots that I worked with, he basically wrote out this entire 10-page document explaining how to properly write a 3-sentence request that gets approved 100% of the time. It's crazy.
Cool.
Yeah, so
For
I might have to send that over to you.
$99.99 if you call now in the next 10 minutes. That's awesome. Yeah, it sounds like I need to
Absolutely.
definitely hear more about that, because it's been getting a little bit more complicated. Most of the time we can get away around it or change the boundary a little bit, but yeah.
Right. So I want to hear from actually some people here in the audience. I want to see some questions, but while they are typing some questions, can you tell me your craziest story of flying? One of your craziest projects? It could either be a good thing that happened or a catastrophe, because I got a
I
funny one.
I could give you one of each, but they're both very short. The most exciting site I've ever flown on probably was, I don't know if I would call it exciting actually. It was a hydrogen plant out in Utah, but it was especially exciting because it was so massive, and I got to fly the Wingtra Gen 2, the new one, fixed wing, beautiful
Oh, that's awesome.
aircraft. Yeah, really just so exciting to watch it take off. So that is
It's
probably
this guy right here, isn't it?
yeah, that's it.
Wait,
Yeah,
if it
that's
wants to show.
fancy orange Swiss made blue
Wait,
SUAS
there we go.
drone. Yeah, that's a also they just got a thermal payload for it, so it's very exciting. So that was
Did they
probably one of
really?
the more exciting, just
Huh.
because it was so new and different from anything I'd flown. My craziest story would be that I I bought a mini drone to fly inside some warehouses because we just needed something that could just be under $500. And, I bought a little
Right.
DJI Mini 2 that Garmin, the owner, was like, we would really like you to just fly through our new warehouse because we're converting this warehouse into this it's where they do all of the flight sims. So there's like all these pods and this like incredible technology. So I was flying through over at lunch because I didn't want anybody to be inside. And I was going like under the X bracing and, like kind of going over and under. And I just went a little bit too high and like hit a beam, but it just like went up. So my camera was just looking down at the floor, and I walked up and looked up, and I had to go find somebody who was at lunch to come get my drone down.
Oh
So I
goodness.
technically crashed my drone, but I like crashed it upside down on a beam, just on the flange of the beam, which is like, this big. And it sat there until somebody went 100 feet there and got it for me. So yeah.
That reminds me of oh man, this is right when I got started. This is 5 years ago. We were doing a progress update of a warehouse that was being built, and there was a tower there, a cell phone tower on site, but we never had issues with it. I thought I had my drone at the right altitude, but I guess for some reason the lawnmower pattern of where the drone goes just missed it every single time. It was like a perfect distance away from where the cell phone tower was versus where the drone was flying. And well, I had to do a battery swap. My battery swap, after I, put the drone back up in the air, I guess the last waypoint was on the other side of the tower. So, this is way in the beginning. So I didn't really pay attention to what was going on. I was like, oh, I'll hit the start button. I'll let the drone go up, and I need to just check something on my computer real quick. And again, this is stupid me. 5 years ago, obviously I'm way better now with my, with my compliance of everything. Always have a hand on the controller, know where your drone's going, keep VLOS. This is 5 years ago, so cut me a little bit of slack. Drone flew straight into the tower. I didn't know until 5 minutes later. I look at my controller. I'm like, there's no feed, there's no video feed, and it says trying to connect to the drone. I'm like, what's going on? So I'm sitting here looking in the sky, looking at the controller. I'm like, something's missing here.
Oh my God.
So I go on site. I was like, I think it hit the tower, because I went back to the to kind of the mission plan, and I could see the trajectory of it. I was like, oh
Yeah.
my God, the little map. And I saw like the replay of like the photos, because it synced to the controller, and you could see the drones going, and then it's sideways, down, black. I'm like, oh God. So I found all of the pieces, well, some of the pieces on the ground, but ended up the drone crashed on the roof of the warehouse that was being built. So I had to ask one of the guys to go on the scissor lift, go on the top of the roof, get my drone for me. I had all the pieces except the camera. The camera was missing. And so I had to email our client saying, hey, had a little accident on site. I'll get the data to you a few days later. So I had to run to Best Buy, buy a brand new Mavic 2, run back to the site, recapture the entire thing, except increasing the altitude so I didn't run into the tower.
Right.
So that was one of my stupidest mistakes. Of course, I didn't have insurance on the drone. So, I was out $1,500 on that. And that was basically just became a break-even project. But that was one of the stupidest mistakes that I had. And then one of the most random ones that happened, I was out in Georgia last year. We were doing a bunch of testing with custom payloads on a heavily modified M600. We basically took the A3 controller, put it onto another Hexwing, or not Hexwing, but Hexcopter, and had modified batteries on there so it could fly a little bit longer. It had better ratio, power to lift ratio, so that we could fly longer than M600. And we were flying the Regal LiDAR sensor on there, so it's like a $280,000 sensor.
You were really risking it all.
Well, we were doing something for an archaeologist. It was an old facility, but it was like a burial ground in an old town for Trail of Tears. So all
Oh,
of
okay.
the Indians that pass through there, and we wanted to do a 3D reconstruction of the entire area there. So we were doing some experimental flying with some new drones because we were testing out some new hardware. We were testing a GPR, a magnetometer, like all of these different sensors. And we wanted to test out this new drone. I mean, we had like 15 different drones out there with us. It was honestly like a pretty cool day. But that drone took off. Three of the pilots there, they didn't fly in mode 2 for DJI. They flew in like a super weird inverted
Oh
one.
no.
But in order to take the drone off, you have to put it in mode 2. And drone's doing its pass. It comes back on its fourth pass. Out of nowhere, the drone turns 180 degrees and then full throttles towards a bunch of trees. Mind you, we're talking about a $300,000 setup. The pilot next to me, he's like, take it. I don't know how to fly mode 2. I'm like, okay. So I literally grabbed the sticks and I had to force bring it back home. I was fighting the drone. Essentially what happened is there was a GPS error and there was a full reset of the home location. So it wanted to go back to mainland China. That's where it thought its home location was. I was like, oh God. Brought
My
the drone
God.
back, landed it. And that was probably one of the scariest moments. Because again, it was an experimental drone and we only had insurance on the LiDAR sensor, but for other things, not, full damage of it. So that was a nightmare, but still a cool experience nonetheless. We got to fly all these other drones too.
Talk about lessons learned. Holy crap. You had a whole career in 2 days with those two stories. Like you learned all the things to do or not to do in 2 days.
Exactly.
Whoa. That's intense, man. Sometime we need to have like a coffee and talk about LiDAR for like hours because I have so many comments.
Yes.
But this is not a LiDAR.
LiDAR is fun.
It's crazy. It's crazy because it's so big.
I've got somebody here asking, Jeff here says, do you guys have any info on how to obtain funding for the drone infrastructure inspection grant? Do you know anything about that?
I don't know anything about that. Do you know anything about that?
I don't. I assume it's probably part of that infrastructure bill that got passed. Do you know anything about that one?
The one in Florida?
I think there was like a nationwide one.
Oh, okay. Then maybe I don't. I thought you were talking about the inspection one in Florida from all of the apartment collapses.
Oh, the one in Fort Myers and
the one I thought there was one in Miami. But no,
yeah,
I have not heard of that.
There's both sides. Yeah.
Yeah, Grant, tell us more.
Yeah, please.
We'd love to know.
Yeah, I would too. I mean, I'll drive back to Tampa right now.
I'll have to Google that later, but no, yeah. Unfortunately, no. My head has been in the weeds of my own program. Need to get back out there.
Yeah, definitely. So is there anything that you feel would be worthwhile for people to consider when jumping into the commercial drone industry?
I mean, a lot of things, pick the right equipment. That's big. Pick the right client, make sure that you're starting at the scale that you can actually do. I think that you said it perfectly, having a true understanding of what you're doing and being able to teach it is essential. At my first job site, I knew barely anything and I was just regurgitating exactly what I had just heard. And I taught the guy next to me so much that he taught a bunch of other people and I didn't even remember what I had told him. So don't stop the education because it's changing every second of every day. It's, the laws are changing, what you can fly, where you can fly, how you can fly. But yeah, getting into it just to read a lot about the different types of, like, there's nothing wrong with the basic, I guess we're switching out of Phantom because the Phantom era has passed, but there's nothing wrong with getting a basic Mavic or a used Mavic.
No, there isn't.
Mapping and
even my most recent video that just released a few hours ago, I talk about picking out the right drone, right? I really have 3 classes of drones. If you got your beginner, your advanced, and then your enterprise. Your advanced and enterprise is kind of the area that you want to be in when providing professional services. But I even have people that have beginner drones providing highly accurate data using Mini 2s tying it to ground control points to generate the accuracy, and selling that data for almost the same cost as an advanced and an enterprise drone. I think it really comes down to understanding your hardware and the full capabilities of it, rather than just, all right, that one costs the most, I'm going to buy that one, and that's going to be my thing. Because I assume in your line of work, the main reason why you're using an M300 is because of that, the payload that you're flying, right?
And because of
Have you guys played anything with the Mavic 3 thermal?
No, I haven't, but I would like to. I was flying the Mavic 2 Enterprise, the thermal one, and the only reason we didn't go with that, well, there were two reasons we didn't go with that. One, because it's just the battery life and how small it is. We just figured it would be incredibly cumbersome for our people to lug around like 25 batteries for this little thing. Um, uh, and then the shutter speed, the shutter itself, mechanical shutter versus an electrical shutter. Like on the Mavics, I'm not sure about the Mavic 3. I think it's different. It's a mechanical shutter. We wanted to have something that was just going to be a little bit more crisp. And when you have a mechanical shutter like the Phantom or the M300, a real camera, you're not getting like digital camera quality or digital camera blur. You're getting like real camera.
Real quality. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why we ended up, and because the budget was there, we knew we were going to have like 35 solar job sites in the next 2 years. And we're hoping that these two matrices can get us through as much of that as possible. Granted, I think we're going to need supplemental drones across the board, but that's just because we're so big. Like I said, with my old program, we just had one Phantom and it turned into three Phantoms. Then it turned into an FPV drone as well, and then a little thermal drone. You can piecemeal it in a small way. And if the more questions you ask of people like Drone Deploy and DJI, most of the time people are pretty willing to help you if you ask questions and want to know the
Yeah,
answers. Like they're willing to give
absolutely.
recommendations. Yeah.
I think just being part of the community overall, whether you're watching, this live stream here, listening to us talk about this, or listening to Drone Deploy's podcast, or maybe some stuff from Drone U, or even just reaching out to people on LinkedIn, right? You have all of these big players in the industry, but they're pretty approachable, believe it or not. I mean, I know you have conversations with Grant every once in a while, or at least he comments on your things. And for those of you who don't know who Grant is, he is probably one of the coolest people at Drone Deploy. Shout out Grant. I'm gonna get you on here one of these days.
Grant, hey.
But he's awesome. But talking to people like that, where they have so much knowledge in one part of the industry. His background was in construction, so that's where he saw the vision of bringing in drones to that industry. So that's just one prime example of it. You've got other people in other industries, right? For the thermal inspections, and thermal inspections can get broken up into several smaller industries too. You've got your rooftop inspections for the moisture leakage, or you can do the facade capture for the moisture leakage. You can do solar panel inspection. There's even people that I know using thermal cameras for looking at crops, funny enough, and all kinds of stuff. I mean, there's so many different use cases, all this stuff. So finding these people in these niche industries and talking with them and asking them about all of these random questions that you may have, there really is no stupid question, especially when you're learning, right? Everybody starts from ground zero, right? You got to start taking the right steps to get into the industry. That's why I'm so knowledgeable, is I asked all the stupid questions and made all the stupid mistakes, so that I know how to not do that. And that's why I create this kind of material for people to not make those mistakes. And I'm sure you've learned quite a bunch along your journey.
Yeah, and honestly, all of it's just been purely from being dumb, just coming in and asking questions, because it is changing so much. And like any technology, it's going to be something else in 10 years. It's, drones on
Exactly.
steroids. So we're all here and we're experts in the room right now from our experience of having our unofficial drone program turned into official drone program, or however it is. But it's evolving. And if we don't keep in touch with these people like the Grants and you and whatever else, the people in ag, people in totally different rescue missions, if we're not all kind of staying aligned and in touch, somebody's going to shoot off and the rest of us are just going to be confused where the industry went. And right now it's been so approachable and so welcoming that everybody is really open to sharing. There is no license on knowledge right now. Everybody is so open. So like everybody watching, it's so much encouragement that people are still asking the questions. And I hope that people do know that we just got into this because we got into it, and we're only have the expertise we do because of the hours spent. It has nothing to do
Right.
with education. It has nothing to do with disposition. We just showed up and we're worked our little butts off asking stupid questions. So there's a lot of resources out there now.
And I think the one key takeaway that I want to give to just everybody, and this, I even talk about this in passing, is don't look at, failure. Don't be afraid of failure, right? Look at failure as a learning opportunity. That is where I have learned the most. My 2 stories of crashing the drone into a cell tower and almost losing a $300,000 drone, sure, they were failures in the moment, but I took so much out of it in terms of, okay, I need to have a little bit of a different setup. I need to have a little bit of a different check and balance system when going into the next project, right? Bringing a notebook with me is something that I started doing, jotting down, all of my processes and how I got from point A to point B, right? But going from point A to point B, there's probably 15, 35, 50 individual steps of, point A, point 1, point 2, point 3, all the way into, you get to, that final step. And so I always look at failures as learning opportunities. I literally have a tattoo on my arm that says succeed through failure. And I take that with everything that I do in life, not just, being a commercial drone pilot and being an educator and, being in the service industry. And I'm sure you could attribute the same to that as well, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's very humbling being here. It's very
Yeah.
humbling. It just, being in the space and being in I never thought of myself as like training people. I never saw myself as a manager. And then I had 50 pilots and they were asking me questions. It's
0
really
to
a beautiful
100.
thing. Yeah. Yeah. And if I had went in there and tried to strong arm everybody into doing what I thought that was right the first time, we would have been doing a horrible program with a horrible product, and it would have been terrible. Like asking the dumb questions, buying a software and really leaning into those people and asking them all their questions, buying another software, leaning into them and asking all their questions. Just it's been gleaning as much as I can and doing it as humbly as possible is the only way forward, because it's so blind otherwise. You don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's every day is something new in this industry,
Absolutely.
and it's growing fast. It may seem stagnant at times, but even in those stagnant moments, there's a ridiculous amount of things happening. Just by following some of the people that I follow on LinkedIn, I mean, I see something new every single day. I'm like, I didn't know you could do that with a drone. So yeah, just I guess being
Totally.
part of the community is going to be the biggest success for anybody wanting to get into this.
Yeah.
Um,
Like
I have a
Instagram,
specific question
even
for you from
stupid.
somebody. Yes, no, even that. Like, there's some simple stuff on there.
Yeah.
Somebody on here asks if having a background in GIS is necessary, or is it beneficial to have a background in GIS when getting into this?
Yeah, I would say it's helpful because you already know the language, but that's all you're learning is the language. You don't need GIS background to get into this. You become equipped with the small amount that you need. GIS is such a large world that
Yep.
even GIS experts, some of them only stay in one side of that world. I usually stay in a very small pocket that's carved out with the surveyors and the drone pilots. So you don't need to be a GIS expert or pro or anything. It does help to get your elbows in there a little bit, because at the end of the day, people are taking your data and doing something else with it most of the time. So
Right.
kind of knowing what they're going to do with it, or knowing how they're going to use it, or even just like the way they're going to export it, I think it gives you a little leg up if you were trying to be a drone pilot with an edge.
Yeah, that's so valuable, and it's something I even tell a lot of the people that follow me is, well, I have a background in software engineering or industrial engineering or whatever, right? Leverage that. I mean, that is going to be such a huge leg up for anybody getting into these different spaces. I've got somebody that does infrastructure inspection, but also does a bunch of engineering on the back end of it. I mean, there's so many different titles for being an engineer, so I don't I don't know the specific one.
Right.
But he's like, well, I have this background, but I want to fly drones full time and do that. Is that feasible? I'm like, yes, absolutely. I mean, you already have the background knowledge on how to manipulate this data, right? If you could be the guy that can capture the data and manipulate it, you can be that turnkey solution. So, for those of you that do want to get maybe a few other certifications underneath your belt, it never hurts to have other certifications. Like, I know people get their level 1 thermography certification. Some people will get their OSHA, whether it's an OSHA 10 or the OSHA 30. People that get their HS2, or is it HS2 or H2S,
H2S or
for
NIST.
oil and gas. Yeah, I mean, there's so many different certifications that you can get, that you can throw on top of your brand, your person, of providing these different services. And that's how you can also find specific niches within the industry, right? The biggest question that I'm sure you and I get all the time, and most drone professionals, is, well, how much do I charge for my services? There is no right answer.
Yeah.
It depends on who the client is, what they're looking for, and then what it takes to generate that deliverable for them. If they just want a pretty map, you can fly with a Mini 2 and generate a pretty map. You don't need a $5, $10, $15,000 drone to do that. But if they need something that's geographically accurate, is super high resolution, and they need to create a full Alta survey off of it, okay, well, then that's maybe when you're going to start looking at a Mavic 3 Enterprise, or jumping up to an M300 with that P1 camera, right? It depends on what those deliverables are. And I even cover this in my most recent YouTube videos. You don't need the best of the best equipment to be a successful commercial drone pilot, or even have your own successful drone business. Just like you, when you started out with a Phantom 4 Pro, right? That was a tried and true workhorse of a drone. You can still get that drone today for, I don't know, $700, $800,
Yeah.
and you'll still be able to provide highly accurate data for basically any. I'd say about 95% of the people in the industry that are looking for orthomosaics from photogrammetry. Now,
Oh, yeah.
when you get into LiDAR, that's an entirely different subject. That's an entirely
Right.
different kind of accuracy that you're generating, but it's also a different price level right there.
Yeah.
So,
And skill level.
Skill level, absolutely.
Because you're not just getting photos anymore. It's a whole different world of processing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
So
it's
do
funny.
you want to win a free drone?
Oh, yeah. Do I? I could use a free drone. I could use one right now, in fact.
Well, for those of you who haven't seen my most recent video, I am giving away a free drone. All you have to do is just download my ebook. I just put the link in the chat. So if you guys want to click on that, download the free ebook, you can win a DJI Air 2S for free. I'm going to be doing a giveaway in about a month from now. So you've got basically like 40 days to enter into it. There's only one entry. And if you can, just drop a like on this video, so it'll help it out a little bit too. But yeah, so hey, maybe you might be winning a free drone if you want,
I'm gonna
even though you
download
already
that
play
right
with all the
now.
big ones. So.
Hey, there's never too many drones for one person. Okay. Also, it just sounded like you're gonna give me a free thing followed by more free things. So I don't know why I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, no, everybody should definitely go and get the ebook. It's the beginner's guide to drone photogrammetry. A lot of the stuff that we were just talking about of different drones and accuracy, I cover that in there. It's all super high level. So just be mindful of that. But it's 27 free pages of information that I consolidated for you guys. And you also get the chance to win a DJI Air 2S, which is actually one of those drones that you can use for drone mapping and photogrammetry. It's actually one of the most preferred ones right now if you are just starting out, which I think that kind of answers Rex, your question of what platform would you consider the best value getting started with photogrammetry. Well, I would say that drone. You've got your 20 megapixel camera. It's 1 inch. It's not mechanical shutter, but even then, like, you don't need a mechanical shutter to generate high quality data. Just slow the drone down and use GCPs, or there's a few other methods to generate accurate data. It just depends on, again, what that deliverable is.
Hey, somebody already got the ebook.
Sweet. I didn't mean to cut you off before I announced that.
No, you're good.
We're talking about the accuracies and everything.
Way more exciting than whatever the heck I was going to say. So, yeah. Oh, I think they were asking what processing platform, not what drone.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, there's different ones out there. Obviously, you can see one of the partners that I have here is Drone Deploy. I swear by Drone Deploy. I may be biased about Drone Deploy, but they are just a turnkey solution in the industry. You also have other products out there like Pix4D. I know somebody in here asked about Pix4D. Who was that? Somebody asked about Pix4D and what our thoughts on. I mean, what's your experience on it?
My experience, I have not used Pix4D really on my own. I've primarily used Drone Deploy. The reason I prefer them for my guys is because I do that whole like spend 2 days with you and then leave you with your drone. And Drone Deploy has been the preferred method. We had a couple other software that people liked okay, but it just didn't catch on as quick. They just said it was a little cumbersome or struggled to take off. There's a few drone software or programs that were originally something else and transitioned into a flight program,
Yep.
and those struggle a little bit, I believe, on like the workability side. But I've had a lot of guys really like Drone Deploy in the field. A lot of them really like Propeller as well. That one does not have a flight application, so you need to fly with something else. But for the processing, Propeller, one thing I definitely would deter people from doing is, well, not deter, but to be really aware, is the pricing structure. There's a lot of different types of pricing structures out there. And I'm not
Yep.
sure exactly what yours is, Dylan. Maybe you can speak to this too. But I find that if it's per photo, it's probably a poor decision, because at some point you will get up to a cap and you kind of don't know when that is, because your map
Right.
might be 12,000 photos or it might be 1,200 photos. You don't know. Or you might have, so many maps or whatever the scale. So paying per project or per something else often has worked better for me. I'm often on an enterprise, so it may be a little bit different, but paying kind of like a piecemeal option
Yep.
is a little bit better than trying to pay per photo, in my experience.
And it also kind of goes back to what that deliverable is. What is your standard client, right? If 80% of the jobs are within 500 or less photos, or say 1,000 or less photos, and you have one of those applications that can process up to that amount and it works for you, then use that, right? You don't need to bounce around all the different softwares. Sure, I play around with just about every single software under the sun. I mean, I'm a nerd, so I like to do that, but
Just can't
I like
help
to see how my
it.
data. I can't help it. But I think one of the hardest pills to swallow for people that want to get Drone Deploy is that price. And fortunately, both you and I operate on the enterprise, and we don't necessarily have to pay for that. Somebody else pays for it, so it does have its leeway on there.
Yeah.
And it is something I am talking to Drone Deploy about, of figuring out how to make a cheaper price point to entry for single drone operators, like like I was way back in the day. Even though I was paying the full price of Drone Deploy, granted, Drone Deploy has gone up in price. So Grant, please stop breaking everybody's wallets for a little bit.
I mean, they include side scan now too, which is just mind blowing. So I
Yeah.
can't I
So
can't be
again, it
mad.
is that turnkey solution. You have
Exactly.
a automated flight, platform, a data processing platform, and a viewing, analytics, and reporting software all built into one, which now also supports 360 cameras. I'm not trying to sound like a sellout shill here for Drone
Because
Deploy,
we're
but they
not.
are just a turnkey solution. But
Yeah.
if you are just getting into the industry, and I cover this in one of my videos that I produced last year with using the DJI Mini 2, right? A sub $500 drone, you can probably get it used for $200 on eBay right now. You have applications like Maps Made Easy, where you can process one free map, or you can pay per map, or they even have their subscription. It's like $5 a month, and you can process a few maps. That can be the start of your progress updates for a construction company. Or you can even download WebODM. It just uses your computer's processing software or processing power, and you can generate your orthomosaics, your point cloud data. You can do your DEM models. You can even bring in other sample data sets or other kinds of data to process. You're not just locked down into one software, and that's all you have to use, right? Again, I'm going to push Drone Deploy because it's the turnkey solution, but you have cheaper alternatives out there. You have softwares like Pix4D and Agisoft, where you can just throw so much freaking data at it, and it's a powerhouse. But you also have to really know how to leverage those softwares, and it's really engineers, softwares, architects that are leveraging those heavy data processing softwares. They have the machines to do it. They also have the know-how on how to manipulate that data to work within their workflow. So, you as a DSP, we're just glorified data gatherers is essentially what we are.
Oh, 100%.
All the processing gets taken care of on the software. So there really is no right software to use. It's just whatever, one, fits your budget, and two, is easiest for you to use to generate those deliverables.
Yeah, and as much as you can like test them, like if there's a free trial of any of those, like, or even just calling them up and saying, "Hey, is there an option where I can do a demo or something?" It really just shows you, some of them just have too much. Some of them do too much, and maybe you don't need it if you're just inspecting like residential roofs or, even just taking photos. You might not need all of that. Maybe you just need a small repository that's in the cloud that you can have maps be stitched and have a professional kind of understanding of your own program.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, that's getting me thinking about making a video on how to leverage all these different free platforms to build your own quote unquote like drone deploy, have your own cloud version of it. There's Web ODM Lightning, which is very cheap, or you can get a super cheap like web hosting from AWS or Microsoft Azure or even Google Cloud. You can have something where you're only paying, 15, $20 a month. You're running Web ODM Web ODM in the cloud, and then you can host all of that on your own, website. I may actually make a
I was
YouTube
gonna
video
say
on
you
how
should
to
do that
set that up.
for sure.
I might do that. Give a little freebie to you guys, because that is the hardest pill to swallow. $500 a month is not cheap at all.
No.
That's a car payment. So how many people have an additional car payment that they can make a month on software if they're just starting out their business? That's why I highly recommend you guys to download that ebook. There's free resources. It's a free resource for you guys, but it also outlines some of the free resources on there, or free applications that you can start leveraging today. That's not going to cost you any money to really get you in the industry. And I think it goes all the way back to the beginning conversation that we have of having that documentation, understanding what your capabilities are, understanding what you can create with the hardware that you have. Starting as simple as that to then build your way up. Again, you need to make these mistakes and failures as learning opportunities. Don't spend all this money up front on a piece of software that you don't know if it's going to get you a return on your investment. Start cheap.
Absolutely. You should do
And
like
that's what I recommend.
you should make like a video like how to create your career for under $100.
I think I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, give me a dollar sign about how much it's gonna be, and I'll sign up.
Perfect. I'm gonna wait for just a few more questions to roll in here. Again, guys, just ask us like whatever you guys want. We're gonna try and answer it the best that we can, with the 20 minutes that we have. But I think overall, like this has been great. Like there's so much to learn in this industry, right? There's so many different things to do to continue to educate yourself on. Again, to this day, I'm still learning a lot about drone photogrammetry. I may be an expert, but even an expert still needs to continue to perfect their craft, to continue to be out in the field. Sure, I'm not doing as much of service work as I used to, right? I used to run a program of generating over 2,500 flights a year for the man. But now, I'm doing small projects here and there, generating this content, but I'm also going out in the field and working with other contractors to understand what these new changes are, what these different, scopes of work can be, and essentially helping people perfect their own programs. That's what you're doing, right? You're out there in the field as well. You're not just sitting behind a computer screen looking at the data come through. You're out there doing it.
Yeah, probably about half the year. I spent a week a month in the field this last year, and it was anywhere from like you're kind of doing right now, from Florida to Utah, where yeah, it doesn't matter what kind of job it is, but it's also varying. Sometimes I'm flying the Matrice and it feels like, big and bad and awesome. And sometimes I'm just show up and I have like, a V2 Phantom that's still being used on a job site. And like, regardless, it's humbling. I get the same stuff out of most of it. It's like, okay, this is not that big of a deal. Like, I don't need this big Bentley. I can fly the Honda and it's still good and I can still do a good job. It's like, like you're saying with the Air, like you could be flying a used Mavic 2 for maybe
Yeah,
$1,000, and like I said, that guy was getting paid like $5,000 every time he came out.
for five
Oh, one thing,
photos.
yeah, yeah. One thing I was gonna say though is like don't undervalue your services, especially in the construction world, because when you think about it in the grand scheme of things, think of it as a bid. You know, the contract is how much. Not that you need to be a certain percentage of the contract, because that would be absurd. But when you think of the grand scheme and you say my services are $10,000, that might sound like a lot, but many of our projects have spent, you know, the matrice is what, $38,000 including the payload. So we bought that,
Yeah,
and you know, $10,000 of software and, you know, insurance and all that. At the end of the day, we're spending like, you know, $60,000 on the drone that year, but it comes out in the wash over time. But it's not necessary for everybody to be doing that all the time. You know, you
right.
don't need to be doing the Bentley. You can be doing smaller drones or older drones, and you're still going to be getting, you know, what you need at the end of the day.
Yeah, 95% is still good enough. It's still an A.
100%. Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's
But
funny that you bring that up, because it's really it's not so much of the cost of, you know, the equipment that, or at least your services, that's going to scare people away. It really comes down to what is it going to save them, right? They're not really too concerned about the cost. They're more concerned about what it's going to save them. And this really applies to kind of any industry that you go into. I wonder if I can say this. I'm currently in a bid right now of helping out this hydro engineering firm. They're pretty big in the Northeast. I won't name drop them, but I'm sure you guys could probably search them up pretty quickly. But there's been this reservoir that has been leaking water since 2016. The previous company that was managing it just did they just threw some paint on it. Basically, they just made it look pretty. They actually didn't fix the core problem. So what happened is they ended up coming to me. They said, "Hey, we need this to, you know, we need a full digital twin of this. We've done photogrammetry before on it, but the surveyor had no idea what he was doing. He had a drone and had a photo and or a camera, and you know, they were doing all this stuff, and we ended up not getting what we needed because they couldn't communicate it properly." And I said, "Well, what is it that you guys need?" And that right there is what has been able to get me a $15,000 quote on a job. They and the reason why is because I asked, I said, "Well, what's your cost? Like, what would it cost to get somebody else, a surveyor, to come back out here and do that again?" They're like, "It's going to cost us $30,000 to $45,000 to get a surveyor to come back out here to redo that whole thing. We just need a digital twin of it. We need the photogrammetry model down to a certain, you know, accuracy." And I said, "Well, as long as you guys have ground control points there, this is what this is the capability of my hardware." And in my bid, I specified, "Hey, this is the specific hardware that I'm providing, or that I'm going to be using on the job. This is my deliverables, and this is the accuracy." Granted, I'm not a surveyor, right? So I put everything within ASPRS standards, which that's all they really need. And then for the model, I said, I can actually go beyond the standard, but I'm just going to say I'm going to give you guys up to the standard, or I'm going to be bare minimum the standard of ASPRS for the accuracy. Combining all that data together, right, I was able to put in a $15,000 bid just by asking and understanding what it is that they needed.
right.
It really goes down to your point of don't undervalue yourself. You know, don't feel like you're bidding too high, because you can always come down from a number. You can never go up from whatever you say. You know, they're
That's
going to
the
be like, "Oh,
truth.
if they're like, if you say, okay, I can do that job for $750, and without blinking an eye, they say, okay, start tomorrow, then you underbid yourself. Whereas if you can at least have some conversation with them, like, we don't want to pay that much, and say, okay, well, what is it that you guys are looking for? What can we cut out of the scope? You know, it doesn't hurt to go too high, but it also depends on the project that you're doing.
Right.
So
Yeah. No, yeah, I'm right there with you. Like it's again the education thing, not just like not telling them what drones are or anything, but just between the two of you, what you're capable of, what they actually want, because sky's the limit. We could do anything. We can give you a survey or we can give you photos. It could be very flat or very 3D. So, you know, and just you probably a lot of the time have to tell them, like, okay, this is what your options even are. Like there's been a lot of I've had a lot of conflict internally with LiDAR because there's this misinformation about photogrammetry. They think that RTK and photogrammetry is inaccurate and we cannot use it, and that LiDAR is the king. And it's just been a confusing conversation because, of course, LiDAR is king, but it's not always appropriate. And it's not.
It's not. It's
not
really
always
not. And there's a lot of stuff
necessary.
that LiDAR can't do that photogrammetry can do. And that's what a lot of people don't understand that. And I think there are some misconceptions in in one of my LiDAR videos, which I do apologize for that. But, I basically told people, LiDAR can penetrate through vegetation. But I said that in a broad, kind of a broad stroke of that. It's more so people kind of understand, okay, LiDAR can see the ground. What's really happening is LiDAR is finding a path, right? If you stand underneath the tree and you look up, wherever you can see the sky, that's where the LiDAR is going to penetrate through, right? It's penetrating, it's going past all the vegetation to find the ground. Well, that's if you want to generate a good surface. But for photogrammetry, if you need to create an accuracy of buildings, right? LiDAR is going to get you there for the general shape of it. But if you're doing an inspection on it, LiDAR is a waste of money. You're going to spend $30,000-$40,000 on a LiDAR project when you could spend $5,000 on just for photogrammetry and get better results.
Yeah.
And people are even using photogrammetry as well to supplement LiDAR data in itself too, right? To generate those different surfaces. There's a project, I don't know if John is still here from the Drone Life up in New Jersey, but we were out on a project, it was like a 180-acre site. They were building 3 different warehouses. And for the area that I captured with the drone, they actually gave me a bad KML. So I didn't actually get the entire site with LiDAR, but they needed to generate a surface because they were doing volumetrics for earthworks. They just need to calculate how much earth they had moved. And because I had missed this entire area due to them not giving me the right KML file, John actually went back out and captured a photogrammetry. He captured a map of an area, leveraging the fundamentals of how to capture photogrammetry, right? Understanding how to do those techniques. He's able to supplement that data because he tied it to ground control points. He was using a Matrice 210 with an X5S camera on there, so it's not a mechanical shutter, but he was still able to get the data. We were able to then extract that data and generate our surface off of it. So again, it comes down to having the right tool for the job, but also understanding what it is those tools can do. Just like you said, you don't need to buy a $30,000, $40,000 LiDAR setup and have LiDAR go and do everything for you, because 9 times out of 10, you don't really need it. And most people don't understand that. And
It's so much cheaper to just have
photogrammetry can be
someone
just
mow.
as exactly. Oh my God. That is so funny because that's so true.
It's always like, can you get a mower out here, or do you need me to buy a $30,000 payload?
Right.
No, it will not shoot through grass. Yes, your topography will look like the grass because photogrammetry is taking pictures, and that's what your point cloud is based off of. But no, you should not buy a LiDAR scanner to shoot lasers through grass. You should just mow the grass because that guy is much cheaper that one day to do it right before you come. It's actually a part of our workflow now. When we come and do RTK scans down in those solar jobs, it's like order of operations number 1. You get a mower out there the day before and your ground control point set with your surveyor. Yeah.
Anytime I do LiDAR, except for this time around, I don't have my weed whacker with me, but I usually bring a weed whacker to cut all the Johnson grass down. I like to get it to the bare earth. Even if the weed whacker is cutting up the dirt, I need a flat surface, because same thing with that job that John and I did out in New Jersey, because the surveyor wasn't, I'm actually not really going to blame the surveyor. I'm going to blame the other company that we were working with. But it was just not proper communication. So what happened is they had set the ground control point 3 inches above the actual surface because they put it on a wooden stake into the ground. So obviously that wooden stake was not all the way in. So when we put our target on top of it, right, all of our data was 2.5 inches off. When we gave it to the surveyors, they're like, this data's crap. Like, why did we just pay
So
$5,000 for
frustrating.
this? And like, I tied it to the data that you guys gave me. The LiDAR doesn't lie. I just tied it to what you guys gave me. So we went back out there and actually shot checkpoints on the surface, recaptured all that
Okay.
data, sent it back over to them, and it was off by like a few millimeters. Like, it was crazy how accurate it was.
Nice.
But it just goes to show, right? If having that, if I didn't have the weed whacker with me, or if you didn't mow the grass, your data is going to have an offset. So it's more than just flying a drone, right? It's understanding what it is that data is going to do.
Yeah. 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 I was going to ask you a question about that, but I can't remember. Oh, yeah. Riddle me this. How often do you have people, when you say ground control points, they do a wooden stake control point with the little cap? You know what I'm talking about? No.
After making that mistake,
Does it
I'm like,
happen
nope.
often?
No, I
Well, like,
tell them, I said, I specify, because before I say, hey, I just need you guys to shoot a few controls for me. They're like, okay, we'll go through a
yeah.
stake here, a
And
stake
then it's
there, a
like
stake
this
over
big.
there. And I'm like, okay, well, that was the mistake, right? Of that failure that I had on the job. I quickly realized what happened when they told me, oh, the data's off by 2.5 inches. I instantly knew what was wrong
Yeah.
because of the way that we shot. I was like, nope, the LiDAR sensor is perfectly calibrated. I didn't screw up on any of my data processing. I did everything properly. I knew, because exactly what they said, oh, it's 2.5 inches off. It was the control that they set for me.
Like that makes
So
sense.
because we made that mistake, any project I do moving forward, or that I have in the future, working with a surveyor, I tell them I need a ground shot, and they're like, oh, okay. And they know
Yes.
exactly what I mean by that. I want them to shoot the ground. I need them to
Yeah.
give me an actual surface, not wherever the stake is sitting.
Why does our industry call them ground control points? That's so confusing. Every time I bring up ground control points in any type of like room with surveyors, they think they immediately know what I'm talking about, but they don't, because they're talking about control points. I'm talking about ground control points. Like, same thing with you. Like, I had this whole conversation with this guy. He's like, I did the GCPs for your last person who came out, so I already know what to do. I was like, all right, well, like, just to let you know, here's a document. Send him the document anyways. He didn't look at it. I get out there and I fly the whole thing, and I get home and start loading. I load all the images in and they're all done. I get home and I see that I can't find any of the GCPs. Like, I just can't see them. Like, hey, can you just hop on this call with me so I can see these? I zoom in to where he tells me to go, and I see a little stake in the ground. I actually see the shadow of the
Oh.
stake. And I'm like, so did you shoot the tops of all of these? And he's like, yeah, the little white cap. It's like,
Oh,
okay,
goodness.
we can't have this. We can't have this. So I need you to go back out. And I actually found like a bunch of different, like there was some spray paint, there was like different things, like a manhole, a few things that I found in that scan. And I actually had him go shoot those points, and I
And
did
shoot them.
PPK instead. Yeah, I just reprocessed it. So worked fine, worked great. That's a workaround for you all, but it was terrifying and not good practice. So now I'll just make
No.
sure they read the document, because, like you said, like, we just don't know what we don't know. And when we're talking in person, we all think we're speaking the same language. If it were up to
Right.
me, I would have you and I change this industry, and we would stop calling them ground control points. We call them ground shots. I like that. That speaks the same
Yes.
language.
Well, what's funny is, and I love having surveyors come into, especially my LiDAR videos, and start, with their tinfoil hat of everything. I'm like, all right, guys, relax. Like, we're providing data for you guys. And one of the funniest things is there's like 15 different terms. You've got ground control points, a control point, a benchmark, a checkpoint, your
I was
base
about to say
station, and all
benchmark.
these different things. And you're like, what? So those are some of the terms that I had to learn and understand how to properly apply them, which is one of the reasons why I actually win bids over other people. They're like, oh, well, we just do an aerial target over there and we're golden. I'm like, no, you gotta, there's a few more steps involved with it too.
Yeah. And the right verbiage is so important to build that trust for people to know that you know what the heck you're talking about. Like, also, somebody actually, I remember what I was going to say like half an hour ago when we were talking about pilots. Their
Yes.
FAA has a series of webcasts. I
Yes, they
subscribe.
do.
Yeah, and those are all very educational. Some of them are about safety, some about like changing rules. I have a subscription. You just like sign up to get emails, and they happen pretty regularly, and they really are educational if you're interested in recreational piloting or even just understanding a greater scope of what the heck the
It
airspace
just
looks
keeps you
like.
up to date on what's going on. Like
Yeah.
you just it's good to know that. I mean, you also have AUVSI. They do a lot of I get an email almost like every other day from AUVSI. Tons of free information of what's just happening in the industry, whether it's a software thing or something that's happening within the FAA or within the government, or hardware or different people coming into the industry. There's a lot of knowledge that you can get from those free emails. And that's actually something I do want to make an effort moving forward on for everybody that is subscribed to my email list is once a week or bi-weekly is giving you guys up-to-date information of what's going on in the industry, 5-6 topics that I think would be beneficial, for you guys to pick up on. But yeah, just there's so much free education out there, not free education, but more just free information, and free resources for you guys to subscribe to. Again, totally free.
Heck yeah. Here for that. Also, there's a lot
Oh
of
yeah.
conversation in here about the Mavic 3 Enterprise.
Have you gotten hands on it?
I have not. I'm not a good person for this one.
We'll probably we'll have to change that here soon. We're gonna get you hands on with LiDAR too when I pass back through. So
heck yeah, absolutely.
You'll be loving that. But yeah, Rashard, man, that's awesome to hear that you picked up the M3E combo and made all your money back in 2 months. Because I mean, that's what I really recommend is.
Yes.
I mean, just that drone is too easy to not buy, and you don't have to go all out like Rashard did. You spent 15 grand is what I saw in there. Most of you don't have to spend that amount of money to get into the industry. I say the top 3 items that you should get for a Mavic 3 Enterprise combo is the Mavic 3 Enterprise itself, the RTK hat, and then extra batteries. You're getting about 40 to 42 minutes of flight time, per battery on that drone. Mechanical shutter, micro four thirds sensor, 20 megapixels, and it also has a telephoto on there. And first ever for DJI and Drone Deploy, really for DJI, is to support third-party software almost immediately when the drone came out. You have Drone Deploy that works on there. You have Hammer Missions and UGCS, which is actually one of my other industry partners. You can import all of their custom mission profiles onto there, and you can do all kinds of data capture outside of the Pilot 2 application. What's great is you don't even have to use any of those. DJI Pilot 2, it's a phenomenal application that does just about 95% of the things that you want to do. Whether you're capturing nadir imagery or oblique image capture, it's both built into it. And for, I think, $3,400 gets you the drone, $700 is the RTK add-on, and then I think it's $600 for the triple battery set, so 4 total batteries. I mean, you're talking 160 minutes of flight time in a day. And if you have a car charger, it's a 100-watt charger, so you can charge a battery in like half an hour. It's crazy. So by the time your drone comes back, you'll have a fresh battery ready to go.
That's the dream. Oh my gosh.
It is a dream. And I paid for my Mavic 3 Enterprise, and I love that drone. When all of the workshops that I'm hosting, which if any of you guys want to join, I still have a few spots left at some of them. I've got San Francisco happening this weekend with Harrison Knoll, who's going to be my guest speaker, which I'm so excited for. Next weekend on April 1st, I'm going to be in Los Angeles speaking with Kyle New. He's big in the industry as well. You guys will learn more about him. I'm going to be in Phoenix, Arizona on April 8th. And then I'll be in Texas, April 22nd and 23rd, in Austin and Houston. And then my last workshop is in Birmingham, Alabama, right at the end of April. So if any of you guys want to go to that, email me and I'll give you guys a discount code to go. But all of the workshops that I host, you guys will get hands-on with the Mavic 3 Enterprise. And what's awesome is I don't have to change out the battery. We can do like 7 missions in the whole demo and use 1 battery, which is still mind-blowing to me. I always call it out whenever I'm flying the drone. I'm like, guys, look at how much percentage the battery is. And they're like, 85%. We've been flying out here for 20 minutes. I'm like, yep, that drone is it's too good.
That's insane. Honestly, that's probably my biggest complaint about drones in general is how often you have to swap out the batteries and how expensive they are. Like, my bread and butter was the
Uh,
Phantom, it still would be,
yeah,
but the Matrice, you cannot charge it without a generator. It's very tough to be in the field
it
without
is.
something to plug it
And
into or
not to
having a ton of
mention it's
batteries.
$1,400 per set of batteries with the M300.
Yes.
So, the cost to run that drone is expensive, but in turn, you're getting stuff done a whole lot quicker. I actually explained this in my first webinar. There's this whole project that we're doing where we needed a certain GSD. We needed a 0.3 inch per pixel GSD because we were doing a pavement analysis. Well, in order to do that with a Phantom 4 or a Mavic 2 or drone, you got to fly at like 60, 70 feet off the ground, which is not fun. So we ended up flying with our phase 3 of the project. We picked up 4 M300 P1 combos and we're able to fly at 180 feet, capture the same quality, but we cut our flight times down by 70%. We
Woof.
were flying an average of an hour and a half on a site with those other drones. We went from an hour and a half to an average of 16 and a half minutes on site.
It takes you longer to set it up than it does to fly it.
Exactly. And that was like the biggest like aha moment to our clients was like, wow, you guys can capture like half of our sites in a day. I'm like, yep.
Yeah, and
it's,
when you're
it's,
on the
it's
commercial
crazy.
side, like that's what you're
Right.
paying for. But like again, not to like minimize like if you have a Phantom or a Mavic or whatever and you're just sitting in your truck and you've got it plugged in, like you could run that little guy with 4 batteries all day long and you could just keep it going. It still does the work. It does what you need it to still. And it's
Right.
almost a little bit easier, honestly, because it's
Oh my
just so
God,
much smaller.
absolutely.
So much
I see
smaller.
a bunch of questions here about RTK and the DRTK2 base station. Um, I mean, I'm already super biased about it, but like, what's your opinion around
Super
leveraging
biased.
that versus leveraging, a free cores network if that's available?
I have only really used the DRTK base station or PPK. So I'm biased because that's pretty much what I know. The Wing Trez PPK, we used it with an arrow
Right.
point with propeller. And yeah, I love it. It's easy. It has 3 buttons. The instructions are on the side of it. The
It's
guys on
stupid
site
easy.
can figure it out. Yeah, it's just easy is the name of the game. If it's easy to swallow and it's not technology fatigue, I'm here for it. So yeah, I'm here to I often don't piecemeal things because I just buy the standard and what works that I know is just going to be tried and true. Because often, if
Right.
I pick that, they're going to stand by it, and if it does go wrong, they'll probably help me out in some way.
Right. And honestly, I think the best thing about that DRTK2 base station really comes down to kind of, I call it the Apple ecosystem, which is of DJI. It's basically what DJI built. It works, right? You
You're so
you turn your
right.
drone on, you open up RTK, and right there, oh, there's my DRTK2 base station. You click it and it connects. Whereas with some of the other methods of Ntrip connecting to a Cores network, and not every single state has a free Cores network. Florida is one of the fortunate states that has free access to it. Basically, all that is, for those of you guys don't really understand how it works, is there's these GPS heads that are mounted into the ground in a fixed location all around the state. It's typically provided or funded by taxpayers, right? Us as taxpayers, through the government, through Department of Transportation, and this is what a lot of survey companies use to, get their an observation file, which is just a stagnant file of where that base station is, so you can do your PPK corrections for your photos, or so you can do RTK, which is what your real-time corrections are for the drone. And so in Florida, basically, I have a free login. I have a free account that I set up with Department of Transportation. I take all of that information. I put in my password or my username, my password. It gives you an IP address because it's through the network that you're connecting through. So I connect my controller to a hotspot, whether it's my phone hotspot or one of those AT&T or Verizon hotspots that you can buy, and then you're receiving corrections in real time from those base stations. But unfortunately, states like Texas and Georgia and North Carolina and Virginia, and I think California as well, they're all paid, meaning you have to pay to get access to it. It's controlled by the private industry, and you're having to pay, $1,500, $2,000 a year just to access it. The good thing about the DJI-2 or the DRTK2 base station, yes, it's expensive one time up front, but it allows you to operate not just anywhere in the US, but anywhere in the world. You can take that base station and use it anywhere you want with any of the DJI products you have. Again, $3,600 is not cheap for most people that want to get a whole setup, which is why if you're going to do, the full setup, you're expected to spend about $7,500, for a full Mavic 3 Enterprise setup with DRTK2 base station. However, which is one of the biggest reasons why I'm super excited to have Rock Robotic as an industry partner. They're coming out with their own base station, $700. It's a decentralized base station, and it's honestly like one of the coolest things that's going to exist out there. Their goal is to get 100 of them shipped out by this year. Basically, you as a consumer would buy it, install it on your house, and now you have access to your own private base station, your own private RTK network to connect into. What's cool about it is you also get access to everybody else that sets up their own base station too. So rather than paying or getting all these free subscriptions from all these different states, if you bounce between different states like you do and like I do, flying drones, you don't want to manage the subscription every single place you go. You'd rather just have an easy setup. So this can be a workaround. Either you pay $700 to get access to your own login account for your own base station, but you also get access to other ones. Or I think you're going to pay like $70 or $100 a year to get access to the entire network anywhere in the world. And it works within a 15-kilometer radius, which is sick. So yeah, those are some of like the cheaper ways that's how this industry is evolving so fast and innovating. You got people like Harrison Knoll, who is pushing the industry super hard, basically giving the middle finger to all of these private industries that want to charge an arm and a leg because it's commercial or it's industrial, right? Long gone are those days, and it's quickly starting to change. I mean, I assume you're probably seeing it too with how quickly people are adopting to the change of leveraging, technology like drones.
Oh yeah, well, and it's like the unofficial program has just dispersed now that the official program is even greater. Like everybody's branching off and saying, why aren't we using this? Or why are we using this? Or I've been using this at home. Like there's so much accessibility. Everything's growing from all sides on the personal and commercial side. And there's so much overlap that it's really like there's no reason not to just dabble in all sides and just kind of keep an open mind.
Absolutely. Well, we've been going for an hour and 40 minutes. I don't know
Look
if
at
you
us.
if you want to keep going, but I've
You
got
can
one
probably tell the
question here
sun's
about.
going down.
Not yet. I'm out in Nevada and
Oh yeah,
Reno,
you're way
so
west.
it's only 5:15 here, so my body
Wow.
hasn't adjusted to any of the time yet. I'm still
Oh,
on the
so
East
it's
Coast.
yeah, I was gonna say it's 7:15 here, but I guess it probably feels like 8:15 to you.
Yeah, it feels pretty late. What is your accuracy that you've gotten with the Mavic 3 Enterprise for your DTM and your contours, or have you done that at all?
Wait, I haven't done the
Sorry,
Mavic
you
3.
don't. Sorry, not the Mavic 3
Oh,
Enterprise,
you're
but
talking
like
about the Matrice.
with the Matrice, because from the DRTK2, whether you're using, I guess, any of DJI's drones in the lineup, it's going to be the same accuracy because it's transmitting the same corrections. So, like, what has been your experience in terms of those accuracies?
I mean, they've been pretty dang accurate. I think that they're usually like 0.002 or 3 inch accuracy. So it's
That's what
just
I'm
so
averaging too.
yeah, it's so accurate that it's really not worth talking about. It's like, okay, this is a millimeter or centimeter. Yeah. It's yeah, sometimes I get 3 zeros, most of the time I get 2. It's yeah, it's very accurate, highly accurate, especially if the only time I've had issues was when I ended up flying in Florida in the morning, and flying in Georgia or Florida in the morning, sometimes you have fog. So I think my content was just not so hot. It was all my images were a little bit blurry, and I reflew it when it was clear and everything was good. So I think it was a user error, which again, that's like 90% of our life. Sometimes it's
Yep.
burning and like parts of the smoke blocks a part of your topo and it looks like this. And sometimes it's foggy, or sometimes you have to fly thermal only between 10:30 and 2:30 because your panels are not facing the sky often enough otherwise. So it's just, it's a lot of knowing all of the other things, the situational things around it, not just how to take off and how to land, evasively maneuver. Not that
Yep.
those aren't important. They
Situational
are though.
awareness is probably I think the most important thing to have when you're out in the fields, because most people are just, all right, throwing the drone up. I don't got to do anything.
I mean, yeah, after you crash a time or two, you really get way more vigilant. I have
Especially when
also
it's
noticed,
your own drone.
yes, when it's your own drone. I have noticed that that it also makes a difference if you're like a little bit younger and have played video games. Like it's so interesting to see the different postures of people when they grab the controller for the first time. There's the people who stand with their hands behind their back who do not want to get involved, and then you like kind of like get them to do it. And then there's the people who are like ready and they're immediately looking at the screen and they're immediately acting as one with the drone. There's usually people who have played Halo before. They're maybe under the age of 26, and I'm generalizing here. There's always like varying,
Yeah.
but I have noticed that the women that I teach are often far more vigilant than the men that I teach, even though they're more hesitant to start. So I kind of try to take them at that balance and pair them together if I can, because together it's perfect. You know,
Yep.
the guy will often like get her to actually do it, but it's been nice to see like both sides of like, okay, we could do more with this vigilance, and you need to listen to Madison a little more because you're going to crash if you don't.
Absolutely. That is probably going to bring us to the last point, or kind of the last thing I want to talk about. But you being a woman in the industry, um, uh, definitely have faced. I'm sure you've probably faced a lot of discrimination in your field, but what has been the most encouraging thing in your position going through all of this?
I think it's when the proof is in the pudding, you know? When you show up and the first time you show up on site, there's already a division because of often age. When you walk on a job site, if you're young, you're just like you're gonna get like negged a little bit. You know, they're gonna give you a little hard time. If you show up in a sedan, they might give you a hard time too. There's a little bit of there's a little bit of that. But it's just the building the trust has been kind of beautiful because after that first interaction where like I get compared to everyone's granddaughter and then they're like, why are you even here? And then I got called like a carpet walker or whatever. There's this transition that happens when we both realize that we really need each other and that we're
Mhm.
here to help each other. And when they're calling me a month later and they're just like, oh man, I loved what you did. Even though when I was there, I didn't feel that way necessarily. I was like, man, I'm such an odd man out. And that's partially on me too. Like I know I'm the only woman on site and that makes me like maybe act the I should just be comfortable. The more comfortable I am and the more that we're just building that trust and honesty of like, I'm here to serve you. I'm here to help you. I'm here to support you. It all kind of just it becomes really beautiful when you just show them the product at the end and they're just like first of all blown away by what you brought them, but then realize like all the options that you really were there to help them in the first place. And you know, I'm not here to tell them how to do their job because they do know construction better than I
Right.
do, you know. And even though I'm an unconventional person in my position, it's like the proof at the end has been really, really satisfying and beautiful and well worth any of the overcomings that I've had to do. I think I've been really lucky at, you know, being in the teams that I've been on. I've had some really awesome advocates and some really incredible bosses. Shout out to Michael Geekus. There's just been really like awesome people that have supported me so that I just felt I had the confidence. And I'm doing my best now to do that, finding women in the field who have never touched a gaming controller and are very uncomfortable with it, but they end up being the best pilot in the room. So I understand it's like weird to overcome those things sometimes because we just didn't do it as much as somebody else, but it's really like we're naturals as much as anybody else. And like we just need
Yep.
somebody to say you can do it a couple of times.
I mean, we're all so capable, and I think that gets oversighted real quickly when it comes to this whole gender roles thing. Obviously the drone industry is really masculine, and I want to be an advocate and I want to be a role model, and I really want to push the industry forward in getting more support of having more women like yourself challenge themselves to be in an uncomfortable position but also prosper, right? And I think having the right support systems in place can help with that development of it.
100%.
And it's why I want to partner up with all of these different companies. And you guys here on the stream are going to hear this for the first time. Want to announce it later this year, but I'm going to be working with you, Julie, and a bunch of other females in the industry to set up an awareness event all over the US to inspire and bring more females into this industry, because this should not just be a male dominated industry at all. We are all so capable at providing the same deliverables. It's just a piece of hardware that separates us, right?
100%.
So there's no reason why, other women can't, be part of this. And it's been really cool hosting these workshops and seeing people face to face. Granted, I've only had 2 other women come to my workshops, but it's awesome seeing them be there, because I want to see more of that. And so I guess with that being said, what are some words of encouragement, or what are some things that, you would recommend, if any women are watching this, should do, when getting into this industry?
I mean, humility number one, but just dive in. We're all imposters. Like, there is no imposter syndrome in drones. We're all imposters. The person who has the most experience only did it since whenever drones started coming around, not that long ago. Anybody who really has experience probably started in 2016. That's not that long ago.
Yeah.
And even though it's uncomfortable and it's weird, like, I started trying things as an adult for the first time, and it's very uncomfortable. You see people like doing roller skates for the first time, or like swimming for the first time. It's exactly like that. It's really humbling and scary, and I think a lot of women want to be perfectionists and make sure that they do it right, and the likelihood of you doing it right and perfectly the first time is so slim that you really should just tear at it and go after it. My advice is just find somebody like myself, or like somebody who, like my boss, who was encouraging me to just try things and get messy and just break stuff. What's the worst that could happen? You break something
Right.
and you lose a little bit of money. Money's liquid. Money's barely even
Yep.
real,
Right.
We are way more capable than we think we are, and the more that we try and just break stuff, that's how the first drone was made. And we're all in this very innovative time, and the special way that your brain works, whoever you might be, could be the key to the next wave of the industry, and that could be anybody. So
Absolutely.
yeah, that's probably my bit.
I love that. Shout out Amelia Earhart.
Literally.
But is there anything else that you want to conclude us on? Any other words of advice?
Yeah, no, probably that. Be humble and break stuff. Like, man, this is such a cool community, and there's so many just like mavericks and do-it-yourself type folks, especially on my side, because like these guys are construction anyway. So, I've been
I love to
enjoying
break things.
expanding. Yeah, we love to break things. We do. Let's hammer it. One of my favorite things that my new boss has said is that we want to make drones just as easy as swinging a hammer. It's just a tool. It's something that we want it to be basic, and that's my goal. I'm excited about it, and the more that people talk about it, the more that when your cousin shows up with a drone at Thanksgiving and you just fly it a little bit, you just got some drone experience. It's good for you. Like, it's healthy. Also, maybe
Absolutely.
a little plug for the podcast coming up, Drone Deploys podcast, Built Different. I will be on it, I think, in a couple months with Grant Hagen, again, with the shout out.
Awesome. I'll be sure to throw that in the description down below once it does come out for anybody that's watching this after the fact. But no, that's really exciting. Thank you so much for sitting here and talking for an hour and 51 minutes.
Oh my God.
It's been awesome. I'm sure we're going to have more conversations in the future. And, to anybody else that's, just tuning in now, go to the beginning of this. We talk a lot about a lot of different things, maybe some things that you might find insightful. But yeah, seriously, thank you so much for hanging out with me for almost 2 hours. It's been fun.
Thank you. You're an awesome host. This has been a blast. I love talking about drones. I could talk about them all night long. So this has been awesome. Thank you.
Drones are fun.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to close out here. So thank you guys so much for being here. Seriously, I wouldn't be able to do any of this stuff without you guys supporting me. And I've got a free ebook that you guys can download now. It is the Beginner's Guide to Drone Photogrammetry. There's a bunch of information on there about what photogrammetry is, where it came from, your different processing softwares, the different softwares you can use to capture, even a list of recommendations for drones. I'm also still running my workshops. I am currently out on the West Coast. I have my San Francisco workshop that's happening this weekend with guest speaker Harrison Knoll from Rock Robotic. I also have another workshop that I'm hosting in Los Angeles on April 1st, Phoenix, April 8th, Austin, Texas, April 22nd, Houston, Texas, April 23rd, and Birmingham on April 29th. So if you guys want to get a discount, just shoot me an email, dylan@pilotbyte.com, and ask me any questions that you guys have. But with that being said, I will see you guys in the next one.